Well, hello everyone and welcome back. Last week we talked about an investor who came to me and was asking, is it time to invest? We worked our way through that, and at least for the property that they were considering, it was not a good investment choice. And there were a number of reasons for that, but this week we're going to look at a different question, and this question is really, is it time to get out of an investment? I have an investor who I actually worked with a few years back, and he bought a single-family residential home as a rental. Since that time, he has lived through COVID and all the problems associated with that. In fact, he had a tenant that was not paying rent during that time and probably didn't pay rent for about maybe a year and 8 months. So he had no rental income coming in. And to make things worse, there were significant maintenance expenses that he incurred. And I'm going to go through each one of those and show you what actually happened. And where I'm going with this, again, is he wants to know, is it time to sell? He's really tired of it, and just to say he's not a happy camper right now is an understatement. I want to emphasize again the fact that this is a real person who is suffering through all this. So, okay, let's just get going and I'll show you what's happening. Okay, well, let me go ahead and show you what happened with this owner. And I'm again doing this as an example, showing you when should you decide to sell. How bad does it have to get before you should just say to yourself, I'm out of here. Let me show you what happened here. And this one is bad, but it's not unusual. During 2021, which is these numbers that I'm going to show you, during that time period, again, this tenant was in here not paying rent because of COVID. The owner was able to collect some money from the federal government, but that came in actually the beginning of this year, 2022. But again, let's go through there and look at the numbers. This tenant is in there paying $2,500, and the tenant moved in about the time that I was helping him in the very beginning. So they're paying $2,500, yet he never raised the rent. That is a big problem. So the tenant's paying $2,500. I should show you just a couple details here first. When he bought this about 3 years ago, he paid $560,000 with a loan of $460,000. He put $100,000 into this. Going back up. This is the rent that should have been paid, for instance, in 2021, but it was not. I'll come back to that in a minute. These are the property taxes. This is the landscaping, insurance, the reserves. This is what I talked about with him back then. Okay, these same numbers. And then a management fee, but he never hired a property manager. That would result in a net operating income of $14,781. He had a 3.5% loan on the property, that $460,000 loan. The payments on that on a yearly basis were $24,787, and it's broken down here. So the cash flow after debt service was negative $10,000. At that time, this investor elected to go ahead with that, and he was able to get the loan, but he knew he would have a negative each month of roughly, let's say, $900. That's what he was planning on. And he could cover that. Again, his objective was hopefully to earn a lot on the appreciation of the property when it sells. I'll come back and talk about that. So we have this cash flow after debt service of a negative $10,000. Now let's go back and go through these numbers again. In 2021, he did not collect that money. In fact, he got zero during that entire year. That being the case, he was able to recover some money from the federal government, but that occurred at the beginning of this year. I'm not sure why it took so long, but it did not happen in the year 2021. Property taxes, yes, he had to pay that. Yes, he had the insurance. This is, again, the number that would have appeared in here, but that's not what really happened. Or we had planned on $2,400, but the actual number worked out to be $2,400 plus $6,500 for a new air conditioning system. So I'm going to put that in here. As a result, the net operating income in 2021 was a negative $20,000. He still had to make the payments on the loan. Therefore, he had his cash flow after debt service was a negative $45,000. That is a big nut. And it gets worse from this point. I'll show you one thing that happened. And it was in regards to the taxes. All these numbers were basically correct, but his taxable income was a negative 52 from this property. But this is tax benefit. That number is way off. He didn't bother to tell me that he also had another rental. And because of that, he had exceeded from the other property the maximum deduction, that $25,000 deduction that you're allowed to offset against your ordinary income. He already exceeded that. Was there any tax benefit? No, it was zero. So he had a cash flow after taxes, which is, there's no tax benefit on here, $45,306. Let's go back up. That was enough to just about wipe him out. He didn't have that kind of money to lose. I think, he hasn't told me exactly now, but he had to put a second on to get some of the money to be able to survive. All right. Back to the original question. And what would you do? I look at this and I said, well, first of all, next year in 2022, you're still going to have an $11,000 negative if you're able to collect the rent. But you should be increasing the rent. He didn't do it yet. It's still $25,000. So he will have an $11,000 negative. This over here, as far as the tax benefit, he can't because of the other property. It won't be there. He's likely to have a tax liability, not a benefit, and he is going to have a cash flow after taxes of a negative $11,000. And that's out of the question. He can't do it. So that's why he came to me and asking, should he sell? Well, I don't have to really think about it. If you can't pay that kind of money, you need to sell. Luckily for him, this property will likely sell for $750,000. The only issue he will have is this is an investment property and it has a tenant. He may not be able to get the $750,000 because of the tenant. The new buyer will probably want to occupy the property, and he wants some assurance that the tenant's going to move out. It's going to make it more difficult. I am not exactly sure he's going to be able to get that number, but if he is able to get the $750,000, that he will be positive on this investment. I can't run through those calculations because I don't know all the numbers for 2019 through 2022, but he will be able to get out of it and make a profit. If you have the cash flow available, if you can pay these negatives, carry the property, I recommend that you do that. Because even if the market drops, it will come back. It always has. In the 40 years I've been doing this, it always comes back, so you may want to hold on to it. In this case, no. I told him, you need to sell the property and get out. You didn't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that one out. He just doesn't have the cash. And that makes the decision real easy. Okay, just to summarize what we have talked about. Normally, when I'm faced with this decision figuring out, is it worthwhile to stay in an investment, I use the 4-step approach. First, I look at the property management. Is the property being properly managed? What are the expenses? And I run through each one of those expense items. I then assemble everything in a cash flow, trying to pinpoint exactly what is the problem. And then the third step in the approach is look at the ratios. Does it highlight where the problem is? Is it in the cash flow, the tax benefit, or the appreciation of the property? And then finally, I'm looking at any possibility for refinancing the property. In this case, it just didn't seem to work out in the investor's best interest. Simply put, the investor just didn't have any extra cash at all. Remaining in the investment just wasn't an option. Alrighty. If you would like to see my approach in a more detailed format, head over to my blog, which is located at Terra Real Estate Learning Center, and the URL is terrarelc.com. Okay, looking forward to seeing you over there. Thank you.